In this episode, I'll show you a few ways you can loot chests. First, I give you a free chest model and show you how to open it in its simplest form. Then I teach you how to open a chest with a Keypress and spawn items out of it Fortnite style. And finally, I teach you how to open a chest via animation and camera change. This skill can be applied to any object you want to interact with, like a door for example. I won't be covering the actual picking up of any items in this episode, however I will be covering that in the next episode in my inventory system tutorial. What's happening, guys? We made it back into England. Thank God we got back in the country because lockdown is a bit crazy right now. But yeah, I can start wearing some new clothes, which is exciting. And yeah, I've realised that the camera lighting is actually terrible, so I need to do something about that for the future videos. But let's dive into this video. You guys have waited long enough. Okay, so the first thing I need you to do is to migrate this chest over to your project. So we're going to right click on it, click Asset Actions, click Migrate, and click OK when this pops up. That's just migrating all the assets which is related to it. And then just find your content folder of your other project, click on that and then select your folder and it will migrate for you, and I'll see you guys when that's done. Okay, so basically I just made like a little level here with these chests and I'm giving you guys the chests and I've just got a bit of advertisements up on the wall. But anyway, let me explain what's going on with this chest. So if we quickly open it up. So very simple, we've got the chest, we've got an overlap box, and that's pretty much it. When we overlap the box, we're firing the open chest and closed chest custom events I made, and here they are. The open chest will basically move the chest in a rotation, so it opens and the closed chest will close it. So this move component node is actually another way you can move something over time. I showed you the timeline way, but this is actually another way which I recently figured out, which is amazing. I find you learn something new with Unreal almost every day. But yeah, so you don't need to set a start location, you just need to set an end location or an end rotation. Decide if you want it to ease in and ease out, so slow down at the start, slow down at the end, and then set your time in here. So this is probably an easier way than the timeline. So move component 2, pretty easy. And down here we're actually deciding the color of the chest. I've made lots of different variables. Each one is going to set a color for a different part of the chest, and we've made them instance editable, so we can actually just click on the chest in the level, pick your colors here for each part of the chest, and then when you actually play the level it will load those colors. Okay, now that's out of the way, let's actually create some cool stuff. Okay, so back on our level, for anyone who's been following along with me on the tutorial series, I've just made another room through here to the right. First thing we're going to do is actually duplicate the chest, and just like I've done here, call this chest open with text. So this one is going to have a text pop up which will tell us what key to press to open the chest. Then we're going to create a widget which will have the text in it. So we're going to right click, user interface, widget, call this chest text. Double click to open it up, bring in a text box in the middle here. With under text, type in press, whatever keystroke you want to open the chest. I'm going to use E to open chest. I'm going to click size the context, and then what we actually need to do is we actually need to anchor it in the middle. So if you press this anchor thing down here and put 0.5 in here, 0.5 in here, 0.5 and 0.5, this just means when we scale it, it will stay centered regardless of our screen resolution. And we also need to do that when we put it in a blueprint, because otherwise it's not going to show. So just compile and save this. Then double click to open up our new chest, go into viewport and add a widget. This is going to be our text we made just a second ago. Chest text, there we go. Something like that. And we're actually going to have it hidden in game to start with, because we don't want it to be initially there, we only want it to be there when we overlap. So we don't want the chest to be opened when we overlap, and we don't want it to close when we stop overlapping. So we're just going to delete those by Alt and left clicking. Drag to pull this out, and then we're going to bring in our widget with Control and drag, and then we're going to pull off and set hidden in game. So when we overlap the chest, we want to see it, so we're going to leave this unchecked. Then we're going to duplicate this with Control W. Then we want it to be hidden again when we walk away from it. Cool. Now we just need a way to trigger it to open. And so I said I was going to use the E key, so we're going to right click, type in E key. So just scroll up until you find all your different keyboard events, and I'm looking for the E key. There we go. So when we press the E key, then we want to open the chest. And you think that would be everything, right? But you're wrong. We actually need to enable the input, because by default you can't just, you have input disabled, so you can't just press loads of keys. You actually need to enable it in a blueprint. So we're going to bring in the player controller, and then we're going to enable input. We're actually going to disconnect target and plug that into player controller like so. Then we're going to pull off player controller and disable input. Okay, so when we overlap the box, we're going to show the widget with the text, and then we're going to enable input. When we leave the box area, we're going to hide the widget again and disable input. And when we press the E key, our chest will open. So now, if we bring our chest into the level, scale it appropriately, because I accidentally made the model way too big, so just scale it down a bit, like so. When we overlap, the widget appears. When we run away, the widget disappears. Then when we press E, the chest will open. But you'll notice the widget stays there, and then even when it's open, the widget still appears to show the text. So let's just fix that. So first, when we open the chest, we want the widget to disappear. So we're going to throw this into here. And then when we overlap it again, we no longer want the widget to show. So what we're going to do is make a variable, call it open question mark. Set it to true when we've opened the box, and then just bring in a branch here. When opened is true, we're not going to do anything, and when it's false, we are going to display the text. So text shows, text doesn't show, text shows, press E, it disappears. Then when we go back, it's gone. Okay, now we can spawn some things. Okay, so we're going to start off by creating some blueprints which we can spawn from the chest. So we're going to right click, create a blueprint, actor, just going to call this spawn 1, double click to open it up, then add a static mesh, whatever you want. I'm going to bring in the potion. If you want to download this, by the way, it's in one of my previous episodes. I can't really remember which. It might be my Consumables one. So we want the object to have physics. So we want it to come out the chest and then bounce as many times as it wants, and then just stand there waiting. The only problem is when you put physics on, it will sink to the very ground. So what we can actually do is actually just have the object as a display and then attach it to something else with physics. So if we just call this potion, then bring in another static mesh, and then attach the potion to this mesh. So this mesh is going to be our physics. So we're going to go onto our cube here, we're going to simulate the physics, and we're going to lock rotation in the X and Y. The only problem is our cube is going to bump into our player, and we're not actually going to be able to overlap the actor. So what we can do is go onto collision, give it a custom collision, and we want it to ignore the camera, and we want it to ignore the pawn. So our guy can walk through it, and our camera that we're controlling won't get hit by it. So now, if we just set it hidden in game, it'll be like it was never there, and it'll still have our physics. So if we play now, our thing is off the ground, and we only collide with the potion. But we don't even want to collide with the potion, do we? So we can actually go under potion and just change collision preset to no collision. So now we have a floating thing that we can spawn in, which can be our first item. So I'm actually going to duplicate this spawn 1, the blueprint we just made, and call it spawn 2, just so I've got another item to demonstrate how to spawn. I'm just going to change the color to blue, so it looks something like that. Okay, now let's spawn them. So we're going to go back onto our chest, then right click, create a custom event, and call this spawn. We could have just put it under the E key, but it would have makes it a bit clearer doing it this way. So then off here we're going to type spawn. So when we press the E key, we will run this custom event spawn. So we're going to right click and spawn actor from class. And usually we just select our class here, but we're actually going to promote this to a variable and call this spawn item 1. Then we're going to duplicate this spawn actor, bring in this, promote to variable, spawn item 2, then make one more, and promote to variable, spawn item 3. Then on each one, just in the top right, click instance editable. Okay, so you may be wondering, why are we promoting these to variables? Why aren't we just picking our actor which we want to spawn? Let's pretend that we've got loads and loads of chests, and if we do this manually and just set it to spawn a potion or something, every single one of those chests is going to spawn a potion. But by promoting it to a variable and checking instance editable, it means when we go into the chest, for each chest we can actually decide what we're going to spawn here. So I can bring in spawn 1, spawn 2 or something, then for a different chest I can spawn, I don't know, spawn a crash or some shit like that. By promoting it to a variable, it means for each chest we can decide what we want to spawn instead of having every single chest spawn the same thing. Okay, so you may be wondering, why are we promoting these to variables? Why aren't we just picking our actor which we want to spawn? Let's pretend that we've got loads and loads of chests, and if we do this manually and just set it to spawn a potion or something, every single one of those chests is going to spawn a potion. But by promoting it to a variable and checking instance editable, it means when we go into the chest, for each chest we can actually decide what we're going to spawn here. So I can bring in spawn 1, spawn 2 or something, then for a different chest I can spawn, I don't know, spawn a crash or some shit like that. But by promoting it to a variable, it means for each chest we can decide what we want to spawn instead of having every single chest spawn the same thing. So for your chest, under the spawn item 1, just bring in your spawn item. Then for the second one, bring in your other spawn item. Spawn this. So I've said we can spawn 3 items, but you can do more or you can do less. I'm pretty sure if these are blank, it just won't spawn anything, and that's cool. So we have an error because we haven't set the transform. We haven't decided where we're going to spawn these actors. So we're going to bring in our chest collision, or bring in wherever you want your actor to spawn. I'm just going to spawn them here, but you can do whatever you want with it. So I'm going to bring in this with control and drag, then I'm going to get world location, then I'm going to split all these transforms, plug it in here, and that's good. We have no more errors there. Then on our chest, we're just going to make sure we're spawning our items. Spawn 1, spawn 2, and then there's one more thing we need to do, because at the moment we're spawning these items, but these cubes are going to collide with each other. So as you can see, the object type of these cubes is a physics body. So if we click ignore on the physics body here, it will ignore the physics body, so these won't collide together. So if we check them both to ignore, now if we press play, we should spawn our items. First thing we're going to do is just add a little delay, just because the chest hasn't fully opened before the items just appear. So we're just going to add a 0.5 delay under the E key. Let's see how it looks now. So you may be wondering why we can only see one item, and that's actually because they're exactly on top of each other. So the next thing we're going to do is add some velocity to them, so they're like spawning out just like in the Fortnite chest. So what you'd usually do when you want to apply something to a spawned actor is pull off the reference here and do your stuff here. But as we don't know what the spawned item is yet, we're actually going to do it inside the spawned blueprint. This isn't the perfect way of doing something, because say we wanted to bring this item in which isn't in a chest, everything that we're going to do to it now is going to be applied to it. So we're going to add velocity, so if you bring it in the level just as a normal unit, that velocity will still be applied to it. But if you just want it to spawn out of chests, this is a great way of doing it. Another way of doing it could be where you have lots of different chest blueprints. So instead of having a flexible chest where you can pick the item in the variable, you set exactly what you want from the chest, and then you'll be able to drag off here and set the velocity. But as like I said, as the blueprint doesn't know which one we're spawning, we can't set any velocity. So we're going to do it in the spawn one. So on begin play, we're going to bring in our static mesh and set velocity and set physics linear velocity. Then we're going to split this up, give the z value a value of 200, attach that to the set physics. Then we want a random float in range because we want the velocity to be random. We want it to spawn out all over the place. So we're going to plug that into the X and then that into the Y. So we're actually going to copy all this, and in our spawn 2, in our other sort of potion type thing, we're just going to paste it in like so. So we go up to our chest. Now when we press E, our items will spawn out in random velocities. So if you find your items are too close together like mine are, you can just change the velocities to something like 300 or 350. Then if you go into your chest and click on the chest bottom, chest top, go onto under collision, custom collision, and then just set it to ignore the physics body. So now we're going to be ignoring these cubes, so the chest won't reduce the actual movement of our items. So now if we spawn them, it looks a lot more like a Fortnite chest. Okay guys, now I'm going to show you how to get your animation to actually look like he's opening the box. It's the same process for opening a door or interacting with any object. This is how you can get your character to actually look like he's interacting with the object. So the first thing we need to do is actually import our chest. So find your chest, the download will be in the description, and then import it like so. So now we're going to rotate it 180 degrees with R then Z. If you look in the top left, you can see exactly how far it's rotating. Okay, then we're going to put it directly in front of his feet. Something like this. Okay, so we know that our box is going to rotate 180 degrees. The top piece will rotate 180 degrees over 1 second. And in Blender, 24 frames is 1 second. So we can actually animate this in our Blender, or any of your softwares will work the same. So go to frame 0, click on the top of the box, press I to location, rotation, scale, then move to 24 frames, sorry, and rotate it 110, then press I. Okay, so we don't want it to open straight away, but we want it to open when our character's in position. So just move these down a bit. Now we can start animating our character. To animate your character so it goes down, then lifts up the box. If you don't know how to animate, watch my animating video, and that will explain everything you need to know to carry on. So I'm going to fast forward this bit. See you guys when it's done. Okay guys, and I think I am happy with that. Mine is far from perfect, but it's just to show you guys roughly what you need to do. And we don't actually need to export the box, we were just using the box as a reference so we know where our character needs to go. So now we can export this animation, bring it into Unreal, and we've got ourselves a looting animation. So I'll see you guys in Unreal when we've got our animation exported. If you don't know how to export an animation, watch my exporting animation video, and that should be everything you need to know on that. Okay guys, now you should have your animation into Unreal and it should be connected with your character. So the first thing we're going to do is actually go into the animation blueprint. If you don't have this, I'd recommend watching my animation blueprint episode, and then you'll know what's up. So what we're going to do is right click and we're going to add a state, and we're going to call this looting, or lotting. Double click to open this up, and then we're going to bring in on our right the asset browser. I'll bring this up in case you can't see it. We're going to bring in our looting animation. So drag it in and connect that up. So we're going to click on our animation, and then we're going to uncheck looping because we don't want our animation to loop. Then we're going to make an animation called loot chest. This will be the variable which decides when we transition into our animation. So then we're going to drag from our idle run into our lotting or looting. Double click to open the transition up, and we're going to control drag our loot chest and bring it in like so. Then we're going to go back, and then we're going to transition back into the idle run when the animation's almost over. So double click to open this transition, type in time remaining, and then when the time remaining is less than 0.1 seconds, we're going to transition back. So now if you compile and then if you click loot chest, if you check it, our guy should loot the chest, then he should go back into our idle. Now we're going to duplicate our chest with the text, and we're going to call this chest open with anim. Open it up, and we're actually going to remove the spawning objects because it doesn't look very good when you're doing an animation, then things pop up and spawn next to you. So we want to play the animation when we're looting the chest. So that means we need to tell the animation instance that looting chest variable is true. So to cast to the animation instance, I'm not sure if this is the easiest way, just a disclaimer. We first need to cast to the player character. So cast to your character, right click and convert it to a pure cast. Then we're going to drag off this and get player character. So now we've got the character, now we can get the actual mesh, the actual character skeleton dude. So get the mesh, and now off this we can get the anim instance, and now we can cast to the animation blueprint. So cast crash anim BP. Like I said, I'm not sure if this is the easiest way, but this is just one way which I know how to do it. It's easier when you're casting to the animation blueprint in the crash character, because then obviously you don't need to cast to the crash character first, but this is how you can do it from a blueprint which isn't inside the player character. So now we need to set looting to true. So if you pull off and set loot chest to true, and delete this delay, then I'm going to add a delay of 1 second, and then I'm going to uncheck it so it can loot, so we can loot another chest if needs be. So now if we go up to our chest and we press the E key, our character will do the looting, but you'll notice the chest opens a little bit too soon. So if you actually open up your animation, we can find out how long it takes to get into the position, and then we can add a delay so the box opens after he's in that position. So he's in the position around the 1.2 mark. So we can add a delay for 1.2 seconds and then we can open the chest. So now back onto our chest, we can add a delay for 1.2 seconds, and then instead of opening the chest as soon as we press the E key, we can open the chest after he's in position. So now the chest should open at more or less the same time as when he lifts up. Cool, that's starting to look good. Now we just need to put Crash in the right place. We need to disable the movement because obviously he can move around while he's doing that animation, and we need to insert a camera just to get the transitioning looking good. So back onto our chest blueprint. So we need to disable the movement as soon as we start playing the animation. So if we get the player controller, because this is where we handle movements and stuff, then we type in set ignore move input. So we want to make him so you can't move during the animation. Then when the animation's done, we want to uncheck this. So if we select this, then press Ctrl W. So now we need to add a delay for the remaining of the animation until the animation's done. So if you go back onto your animation, find out the full length of your animation. Mine is 2.33 seconds. So we're already doing a delay for 1.2 seconds. So we just need another delay for another 1.1 seconds because these two add up to 2.3. So after the delays are all done, the animation will be over. Then we can plug this in and tell him to stop ignoring input. So now, when we loot, we can't move. Then when we've looted, we can move again, one step closer. So all these nodes here, all they're doing is disabling the movement input and playing the animation and playing the chest animation with a delay so it times correctly. Then we're just enabling it again. So what we need to do now is put Crash in a position where he lines up with the chest. And I don't know if there's a better way, but one of the ways that I came up with is by bringing in a scene component like I've done here. So bring in a scene component, call this Crash position ref. Then put this into a position where you think your character will need to be. So now we've got a reference. Now we can set the Crash's location and rotation to this reference. So in the event graph, what we want to do is actually set the capsule location and rotation, because if you look on your character, the capsule is basically all the collision that your character has. If your character is offset, then all the collision will be happening here, and then he's just going to be offset. So we don't want to move the actual character, we want to move the capsule component. So we're going to duplicate this cast to Crash character just to make things a bit simpler, and then we're going to get cap and scroll down, and we're going to get the capsule component. Then we're going to set location and set world location and rotation. So plug that in just before we play the animation by checking the loot chest in the animation blueprint. Now we can bring in our Crash position ref, which holds the location that we want him to be in, and then we can get world location and we can get world rotation. Okay, so we only want the capsule to be in the right X and Y. We don't want the Z to change. So what we can actually do is we can get Control W to duplicate. We can get the world location of the capsule component, split that up, then split the set world location and rotation, and we can actually use the capsule location's Z-axis. So we're setting its location to what its Z-axis already is. So the Z won't change. Now, if we split up the world location of the position ref, we can set the new X and the new Y. So when this loads, we're getting the position of the ref we made, the scene ref, and we're going to set Crash's location in the X and Y to that location. Then we're going to set the Z axis to the capsule component's location, which it's already at. Now we can do the same with the rotation. We can just put the rotation in like so. So now when we play, our guy will get teleported into position. If your guy's facing the wrong way, all you need to do is just rotate your Crash position ref scene we made until it lines up correctly. So there's one more thing we're going to do, and you'll notice that when we press E, we get teleported into that position. There's nothing we can really do about that apart from getting him to walk over, but it won't look very smooth. So one way we can sort of cheap trick around it is by changing the camera for a brief second so we can see him looting the chest from a different angle and then change it back. So what we're going to do is go back onto our chest and we're going to add a camera. I've already put one in here just so I know roughly where I'm going to put mine, but if you type in camera, then move the camera into a position where you'd want to look from when your guy's looting the chest. I'm going to delete mine because I've already got my position. One way you can find out a bit easier is if you go back onto your map, you can actually double click to actually move this outside of the blueprint. And then once you've finished moving it, just go on to edit blueprint and apply instance changes to blueprint. You can also do that with other things. So if you double click on the chest, you can actually move different parts without it being inside the blueprint. Then if you just click apply instance change to blueprint, then it will change. So I actually figured that out fairly late into my Unreal Engine career, but I thought I'd pass it on to you guys really quickly. Okay, so when you've got a camera into a position where you're happy with, go back onto the event graph. We're going to get the player controller, and then we're going to drag off this and set view target with blend. Then we're going to drag in our camera, pull off this and say get owner, and then plug that into the new view target. So this is going to set our camera to our camera position. So I'm just going to move all this down. Then after we've set the location of Crash, at the same time as we're setting the location, we want to change the camera. So this means we actually missed the part where he's getting teleported. Then at the end we want to go back to our character's camera. So if you take the cast to Crash character and the player controller, press Control W, then copy your set view target with blend and the player controller, sorry. Then plug your player controller into the target, then off the Crash character, get camera, get following camera, then plug that into, we need to get owner, then plug that into new view target. Now if you plug that in, so when the animation's over, we want to go back to our original camera. Then if you set the blend time to 1 second, we'll transition from that camera back to our default camera. So now if you press play, teleports to the new camera, then it transitions back. Looks awesome. And so guys, that is the end of another episode. Next time we're doing an inventory system where we can pick up objects, throw away objects, pick up quest items, stack objects, etc. We're doing a lot. We might be doing different tabs for the inventory system, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be a really good episode, but it might take me a while to put together just because I need to look up a few things to make sure I can pass on the information to you guys as efficiently as possible. But thank you for watching, thank you for the support as always, and I'll see you next time.